Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everyone, to our session about the latest and hottest in DevTools in 2014. Now, my name is Paul Bakaus, and I work with the DevTools team to enable you to create, develop, and design, and obviously debug your sites and applications. So for those of you that don't know and haven't worked with DevTools before, here's a quick primer. The Chrome DevTools are dedicated to delivering you a real-time debugging, profiling, and development environment. So here's just a quick few images of what it enables, but we'll dig into some of that. So we think that you're DevTools. That's very important to stress. We'd like you to think of DevTools as a friendly assistant in your daily life, guiding you and hiding unneeded complexity and helping you focus on work that matters most. So in 2014, more so than ever, the time has come to build fully responsive websites and apps to serve the whole screen continuum of devices rather than just a single device category, because right now many sites just have a mobile version of the site and then a desktop version of the site, and the desktop version is reused on the iPads. But you know, the iPad obviously uses touch, and it's not the same environment. So, and then obviously right in the middle there's tablets, and really the lines are getting blurry. With my watch here, there's another completely different screen. And so it's very important to build out the whole screen continuum. And if you're not convinced, just look at the data, right? If we're looking at the mobile web traffic, not just smartphones in general, right? But the mobile web traffic clearly shows that we need to do something about this. We need to build mobile websites, and mobile in a very broad sense. But are we up for the challenge? Is our workflow good enough? And I think it's not. I think clearly there's really some challenges that we're looking at. You know, we moved so quickly to that wave, to mobile, that we forgot to build the right tools. And I mean that in the most intrinsic sense of in the best sense of the word flow. You know, workflow has the word flow in it, and flow is really the state of mind where you're very immersed. So really, the ideal case is this meditating Buddhist monk, and you're in this immersed state of mind. You're very energized. It's like when you have a coding session and you develop for a couple hours and you listen to great music, and you're very in there. And you're very fully involved, and it's a great feeling, right? You're enjoying yourself, you're getting stuff done, it's great. But I think if you're working with lots of devices, you probably rather look like this guy. Because what do you do when you develop with actual devices? Well, first of all, you have to buy actual devices. You have to get them. You have to put them in the closet. You have to charge them. You have to obviously connect them when you need them and play with the finicky UI to reload. And it's all just not very nice. It breaks you out of your development workflow, and you have to come back and forth because you're debugging on your desktop, and then finally realize, OK, I probably need to check on my phone. And obviously, that's not the ideal workflow. So we went back to the drawing board and really thought hard about this problem. How can we come up with a disruptive flow that works, that just works and gets the job done and doesn't really disrupt you? Well, disruptive flow, non-disruptive flow, I would have to say. So a flow that doesn't disrupt you from your work, right? Something that feels natural. And we found there are really three areas for radical improvement: design, develop, and iterate. And in that order, actually, because when you start developing, you probably get a designer PSD. So you take the PSD and you transform it into code, into HTML and CSS. And then you probably expand it, because the designer only gave you one resolution. You expand it to multiple media queries and work with that. And then next is development. And I think that's design as well. I think you're doing a design work here if you're an engineer. Now, then you move over to develop. And so you're trying to develop under conditions that feel relatively similar to what you want to achieve. So you resize your browser window, you kind of make sense of, OK, this is a Nexus 5 resolution, this is an iPhone resolution. And then finally, once you're ready, you want to iterate on actual devices, because they have unique quirks and nasty bugs sometimes So really, you need to get in there and test on actual devices. So let's focus on each of these and dig into design first. So I mentioned it before, but we have the screen continuum of devices. And what's really important, we're looking at responsive layouts here. We want a layout that stretches to a multitude of resolutions. So, and that's because mobile is the #1 platform. So you want to make sure your content just flows like water, flows into different containers easily. And you really should make sure, there's lots of tools that actually try to see something similar nowadays, but many start from the desktop. So design for the desktop, and then you break down and write media queries for smaller resolutions. But you really want to make sure to start with the mobile side, because otherwise you forget about the mobile side. And if you don't have a mobile website, you just don't have a website in 2014. It's easy as that. If you don't have a mobile website, you have no website. So, well, let me explain you the old workflow for a bit, right? In the design process, I take my website, so that's my website. I build it mobile first. So what do I do next? Well, I go back to my editor, and I'm going to add some media queries in there, right? I'm going to put media queries in there, and I'm going to build a tablet media query, for instance. Now, I go back to my website, reload under the roughly tablet conditions, and find out that it's still not the right size. So I get back to my editor, I change some values again, go back to the preview, reload again, until, shift pixels around, until, my elements appear where they should be appearing. And it's painful. I'm going back and forth, and I don't like that. I mean, I'm not sure about you, but I really am not a fan of that workflow. So we thought we could do better than that. Much better, actually. But let's go one step next to emulation. Well, and the developer aspect of it. So now that you have all media queries in there, and you have a responsive layout, you still realize that browser window resizing is not the same as emulating a smartphone, right? So now show me some hands. Who actually tests on real devices? All right, quite a few. Who tests on more than 10 devices? All right, I see much less hands. There's some of you, and you're great. You're amazing. But really, you know how painful it is. I mean, not everyone has the ability to acquire all of these devices, to get a device lab set up, to get all kinds of data plans. And so we went out a couple months ago, and we put in emulation controls into DevTools. So some of you might already have seen that. It wasn't ready at last I/O, but emulation controls that emulate the viewport, emulate mouse events, touch events, and various other things, the user agent. But that was just a start. It was in an individual drawer, and I think we could do much better than that. So how can we get from this guy to the very frustrated guy to the Buddhist monk that's meditating? Well, I'm incredibly announced today to introduce our new device mode. Here we go. So the device mode is a one-click action, and I'm going to show it to you, obviously, that combines the best of media queries with emulation and much more. So are you ready for a demo? All right. Let me show you some of the device mode. There we go. Just move that over here. And we want to make it bigger. Actually, just give me a tiny second. I hope that works. I'm going to try to change the resolution quickly to make more sense out of this. Yes. All right. Here we go. So, just click the button. Here we go. So this is one of our sites that we built. where you can learn all about mobile development, web fundamentals. And web fundamentals is a nice example for a responsive website, which is why I picked it. So I'm going to bring up DevTools here. And here we go. And now in DevTools, you'll notice, I'm just going to zoom in so you can see this, you'll notice a new icon next to the inspect icon. And it's a mobile phone. So if you click that icon, it brings up our new responsive design mode, or device mode, as we now call it. Now, let me focus on a few things. First of all, it makes it very easy to change your layout, right? So you can quickly change your layout to whatever you want to. And as you can see, now it emulates touch events right out of the box. So it's a one-click action into mobile web development. Really, we wanted to make it as simple as possible to get you there. So it emulates the viewport characteristics of a mobile phone, but it also emulates touch events out of the box. Now, you can go further than that, because as you can see up here, you have all sorts of device emulation right in there. So we have a couple of device presets that you can choose from to quickly emulate a certain device. So let's try to pick out one, let's say Nexus 5. All right, so this is the Nexus 5 resolution. It's set the right resolution here. I can mess with that if I want to. I can also rotate it, of course, to find out different ones. But actually, so I get a warning here that I have to reload, because sometimes there's server-side processing involved into figuring out the right viewport. Let me reload this to actually make it look nice. Here we go. So this looks like a mobile website. And now, again, I can rotate it. And also, very importantly, I could test Retina here. So some of these devices have high DPI screens. And I can easily change the device pixel ratio right here. Yes, I think I'm pointing to it. To actually test my images with the new picture element or image set. So let's see. We also have a fit property in here. So if you're developing on small screens, so I just changed the resolution to make it a bit smaller in this one. If you're developing on small screens and you pick something that is big, it shrinks the whole thing. So let me reload this again to bring the rulers back. Right? So now it's all shrinked, but you can disable that if you want to. Whoop, here we go. So you can easily just preview, and this is just scaled, so you can still work with it just naturally. So let's see, let's go back to Nexus 5 and show you what the design aspect of this is in there, of course. Because what we have in here is this nice button, and it brings up media queries. Here you go. So this is a view of all of your media queries on the site, right there. So as you can see, I'm resizing this so you can get a better view. Those are all running on the site. And if I click on one of them, it jumps to the right size. So I can easily preview all of them and edit them in the style drawer. And one very important thing as well, if I right-click on one of them, let's say this green one over here, and it gives me a drop-down and tells me exactly where that media query is. So I could jump right into the source here. This one right there, now this is obfuscated, so I could pretty print this one, and it would then go directly to that media query. Let's try this again. Here we go. Oh, there we are. All right. And then edit it right in there, because we have a new feature in DevTools called Workspaces that, if you haven't used it yet, connects your local file system of your website with the file system in DevTools. So that you can hit Control-S, for instance, to save it directly back to your file system. So finally, one feature that is really nifty in combination with media queries, because if you're nesting many media queries, that would become very useful. Let's say I'm scrolling up here, and I want to change this caption right there. So I inspect it. Well, trying to find the button. No, that was the wrong one. OK, let's try it this way. Actually, it's pretty hard to see the screen from over here. OK, let's actually just do it like this, right? So I have an element here. And then what I can do here is style filtering. So a nice nifty feature that we brought in that you might have discovered yet already, but it's very nifty because if you have lots of style rules on top of an element and you want to find something out about the element, you can quickly click in here. Let's see, what do we have here? Line height, for instance, right? And just type a couple letters, and it highlights them, brings up exactly what you just searched for, and you can edit them. So that becomes very useful with media queries. So finally, if you don't want to have this view open all the time, because you just want to focus on your content, well, if you close this again, you'll notice, and I hope you can see it, but there are some rulers in here. On the ruler, there are some sticks that you can click. So those here are actually the media queries right there. And if you click on them, it just brings up that view all again. So it's a nice preview of what you're looking at. So, yeah, finally, now for some of you that have used emulation before, there's more, obviously. So there's still a lot more that you can emulate. We just put the best, what you probably need right away, up here. But if you click on that button right here, it opens up the original emulation controls in detailed mode. And that allows you to emulate all kinds of sensory information, accelerometer, geolocation, user agent, you name it. So finally, of course, you might not just work on mobile, right? Maybe you also want to develop your website so it looks fine on desktop. Well, you can do that as well. This jumps you right into mobile view, but if you want to do media queries and design a desktop page, you just hit the reset button. And the reset button, as you can see, removes the viewport rulers, removes the touch event emulation, so we're back to normal mouse events, and it's hover effects work again. And you basically just keep on resizing your window like you did before, but with media queries. So now, let's go back to the presentation for a moment, because we're not done yet. We think that we don't have a complete story to tell yet. So let's talk a bit about connectivity. Now, in your office Wi-Fi, right, if you have lots of devices, and they're all connected to your office Wi-Fi, you probably have a very good experience loading your page. Now, let's say for the sake of an argument, just for the sake of an argument, you're at the conference, right? And it's the same connection type, right? You're basically on a Wi-Fi connection. But I argue it's probably not the same experience to your office. Now, this is an important aspect of testing, right? Because how do you know what your users actually experience if you don't have a 3G connection to test on? And it's a bit like, I'm a German guy, German Autobahn versus American Autobahn. And we really think the whole story is not complete. The whole emulation story is simply not complete without connectivity, without network emulation. So I'm incredibly excited to show you, and you might have seen it already on the demo. I'm incredibly excited to show you, and I think we're the first to do this, to show you network emulation right in your browser. So let's jump back to the demo. Here we go. And let's use a different page. I'm going to pick the Huffington Post right here. The US survives, OK. So let's say, OK, I'm going to bring up the DevTools again. I have a new network panel here, right? So I'm looking at the network data coming in. So let me reload the page just so you get a picture. OK. So stuff is loading here. And OK, it's already not that fast, right? But we're getting there. And it's currently set to no throttling. OK, page is loaded. And now, do I actually? No, I don't want Flash. No! OK. So now, let's actually bring this to a, oh, this is why it took so long. So bring this to another resolution, and then reload again. Here we go. So now we have a mobile website. it's loading, but it's loading too fast because, OK, granted, I'm on conference Wi-Fi. It's not as good as office Wi-Fi. But let's just try to simulate another connection. So let's go to, what do we have here? Let's say Edge, right? Unfortunately, in Germany, we still have Edge in some remote destinations. And let's try to reload this and see what happens. So here we go, blank page. And pretend I didn't know how the soccer game went this morning, right? And I want to check it out. I was like, no, what is happening? Can't this train go out of the tunnel? And that might happen as well. Yes, right? Even worse. That's even worse. Now I can never find out how that game went. OK, let's bring this up again. Just bear with me for a second. Here we go. Yes. All right. And yes, so this is network throttling. You saw the connection is actually quite slower, and this feature is still experimental as with the others. It's in Canary right now, so you can check it out. You can download it, and you can play with it. But this is the first time I've been seeing that crash, I swear. It's usually relatively stable. Now, one important thing, and this is something that was hard to do, but is obvious once you use it. This network emulation, you might have played with some others, right? You might have played with tools that drag down your entire connection, and like link conditioner or Apple internal software. But those do it for your whole system. Now, this one does it per tab, right? So even if you completely hog down one tab, you can still query for documentation in another tab. And not only does it throttle, but it also goes completely offline. So if I hit this one and go to the offline one right here, it does what I would expect. I reload the page, and it tells me, hey, I'm offline, right? I didn't have to unplug my connection. I didn't have to disable my Wi-Fi. And I could still now Google for documentation about app cache, because we all know app cache is horrible. So, very useful feature. Yes, thank you. So let's go back to the slides once more. Iteration. So now that I showed you all this emulation stuff and the new device mode, let's switch to actual devices for a second. And you might be thinking, what? He just talked about all this stuff and how I can improve my workflow, and now he still wants to get me the devices and plug them in, right? That's weird. But I think, no, that was the world before, right? So this is the Pain Station. And the Pain Station is a version of Pong. It's very fun to play, actually. It electrifies and burns you when you fail. But that makes it kind of, adrenaline. It's pumping. It's adventurous. And that was the world of device testing before. But luckily, it's easier now. And it has to be, because testing with actual emulation is not the same as a smartphone. No matter how hard we try, we can't simulate the whole thing. We can't just, because there's different graphics drivers, there's different characteristics on every single device. There are devices out there, like the Samsung Galaxy S3, which is a great phone, but it has 3 different hardware versions across the globe, I think. And it's very hard to test for all of them. So you have to have devices to actually test. Now, what are the reasons for you to actually use devices? Well, performance profiling, device-specific glitches, as I just mentioned, and the context. What do I mean by context? Well, the look and feel, right? If you're looking at something on your desktop and everything is very big, and you don't actually touch with but you use your mouse to navigate, you will press the buttons every time, right? Even if they're tiny. But if you have a device in your hand that's actually much tinier, you'll have a harder time. So the context is extremely important. So let's first talk about performance profiling. Now, and actually, no, let's dig into performance profiling, because performance profiling, in my opinion, is one of the most important aspects of it. And I want to show you a demo for this as well. And as I said, before it was very painful, but we tried to make it very, very simple. Maybe not like this keyboard right here, because that becomes a bit useless. But we tried to make it equally simple with remaining functionality. So let's show you what we did. All right. I'm going to get my Chromium up here again. Here we go. I'm going to switch to another site. Here we go. And now I'm going to open DevTools to show you exactly what happens. OK. So I'm going to bring out my Nexus 5, right? That's just an unmodified Nexus 5. I have my USB connection right here. I'm going to plug this in. Here we go. What just happened? Well, let me show you. Right in that corner, we get another small mobile icon. And it shows me that one device is connected. That's all I did. I just plugged my phone in, right? There's nothing I did on my phone yet. Well, I'm clicking on this, and it brings up a new device panel right down here. Whoop. Whoop. Here we go. So this tells me that I just connected my Nexus 5, and it's running Chromium. So what can I do now? Well, I'm going to unlock my screen just now. Here we go. So I see this works. So I have Chrome open on my screen. Just have to believe me. I'm going to click Try Here. And what this does now, let me move this screen over. This just opened this new screen. And network connection is a bit slow right now, but let's just wait for it. So while we're waiting, what just happened? Well, I told DevTools that I want to try the page I just opened on my phone, and I want to test it on my phone. So what it did, when clicking Try Here, it sent it to my phone, it loaded it in a new tab, and it opened a new remote debugging session right away. But not only that, it also opened screencast right away. So what this is doing, it's actually screencasting from my device right onto my desktop. And if that wasn't cool enough, now this is all interactive. So it's all emulation right in there. Not actually emulation, but this is my real phone. I'm navigating on my real phone right now. I can click stuff here. I can even inspect stuff here, right? So this is all live. And the best of it is that all of all of DevTools is in there. It's not just a light version of DevTools. It's the full version of DevTools. So let me show you some of the features that you could use to debug performance in here. And I'm going to highlight some of the new stuff. So first of all, this is a nifty 3D effect. Hopefully. Let's try again. I think it's not a nifty 3D effect because it's still loading. Okay, let's try this again. And so the effect we're actually looking at is this one. So this is the 3D effect. And let's try it again. There we go. The page is just very slow right now. But you know what? I'm going to show you the feature outside of that tab. But you just have to pretend that this one is the mobile phone you're just looking at. But again, the features are all compatible. So now, as you can see, I have a new layers panel right here. So the Layers panel will give me a presentation, a preview of what's happening on my page. All the layers that I used to render certain things in there. So now I can rotate this and look at what's happening, right? So I can see that many layers here stacked on top of each other. And if I click the toggle, check out what happens. Here we go. So all of this rendered in real time, and I can click on them and do stuff with it. But even better, one of the new features in here, and just to let you know, all of this is experimental, and the UI will likely change, but we built in a paint profiler right here, because one of the common problems with mobile performance is painting. And painting happens often on the GPU, but not always. So let me double-click this guy. And now what it did here, it rendered the whole page, the whole document, onto that background surface of the graphical representation that I have here. And now down here, just resizing that window so you can see what I'm looking at. There we go. Down here, you actually get a profile. So now we can see what painting that whole thing did. There we go. So let me zoom in again, just to show you what happened. So now I'm going to select a certain thing here. And then, as you can see, as I'm dragging around and selecting new parts, it renders what it just drawn. So I see all the drawing commands that just happened, and I can quickly follow and find out what took so long to paint. I have spikes right at the beginning and here, and those, I think, are some of the border radiuses that we're seeing in the toggle button. So this is a very nice, convenient way to figure out what took so long to paint. But let me show you another feature. So let's talk about profiling. So when you want to know how things animate on the timeline, you go over to timeline, here we go, and you look at what's happening in here. I'm going to reload this. There we go, now we got some stuff recorded. And yes, I'm not seeing anything. My cursor is just too big. Okay. Here we go. I think now we're seeing stuff. It's hard to say. Just give me a second. No. OK, we're going to try that again. OK. Here we go. So now we actually have some stuff down here. So we're seeing some of the events that just happened. Those are, for whatever reason, just network events right now. But the timeline is useful if you want to see what's happening while you're loading your page. So now we're seeing what happened in the network requests. But the problem is, sometimes I want to know what took so long to paint, but I also want to know why did it paint so long. And it's often JavaScript that caused it to paint. So earlier, we didn't have the ability to combine those two, to actually find out, hey, this JavaScript just ran, and a relayout happened because that JavaScript ran. And before, you basically had to go through the profile and then record a CPO profile on JavaScript. So you would run this, and then you would stop it, and then you would look at, OK, not a lot happens here on the page, obviously, but you would look at what actually just happened. But now, this is another experimental feature, but I think it's a very good one. Now, what we did here is to combine JavaScript profiling with the timeline. So if I click this flame chart icon right here, it switches to a different view. I'm going to record this and reload. Let's hope this works. No? All right, that doesn't make a great demo right now. But, Weird. OK, so what's supposed to happen? You will be able, in that thing down here, you will be able to see your timeline commands in a nice flame chart, as well as what's happening in JavaScript. So for instance, if you're loading Google Analytics, and this page is loading Google Analytics, you see that it loaded Google Analytics. But down there, you also see what just happened after it loaded it, so what it initialized, and what is happening after that. So in the case of Google Analytics, it adds some styles to the page that cause a relayout. And you will notice that when you have a working view that actually shows you that. So a couple of performance features that didn't work out that well in the demo. But again, try with them at home, and I hope they'll work better on your computer. So let's move back. So again, all of these features, everything that's in DevTools, even the most advanced performance stuff, is available to you everywhere, including the ones I just showed you. And they work with every device running Chrome, even the Chromecast. So we had design, develop, and iterate right here. We think today's DevTools Refresh is going to make you a lot happier, hopefully, and more productive. And we'd love to hear from you if it does, and especially if it doesn't. So design went to responsive layouts, develop went to rich emulation, and iterate turned into remote debugging. So in responsive layouts, I showed you a rich representation of media queries, style filtering, media query editing, and it plays well with inline emulation altogether in that big view. Now, in emulation, you have device presets for most popular devices, rich viewport emulation, sensor emulation, and the advanced panel down there with touch, geolocation, and accelerometer, and this is a very cool new feature, network throttling and offline support per tab. And finally, with remote debugging, once you have a pretty good website set up, you just plug and play. It's as easy as that. You take your phone, you plug it in, it brings up a new panel that shows you one connected device. And it has the same powerful features. It screencasts from your device directly onto your laptop. And it also supports port forwarding for those advanced use cases where you want to develop on localhost and not just on a remote website. You can do that. There's an advanced panel down there that supports port forwarding. So you just put in, hey, I want to forward localhost to this port on my device. And as soon as you have that, you can debug localhost right on your device. So before we completely finish, we almost arrived at the end. But I want you to know that you're all invited to collaborate with us. Because if you look at that screen, all of the things that you're seeing here, they all have something in common. They're coming from you. They're coming from the community. All of these features are because you just told us what you want. So we really value your feature requests, no matter how big or small. See, if we don't hear from you, we'll build the DevTools that we like, right? But we'd much rather build the DevTools that you like. So do get in touch. Every bug ticket counts. So sadly, this marks the end of the session. Come speak with me and many others involved in DevTools at the sandbox afterwards. And we'll have a QA afterwards as well, so enjoy the rest of your I/O. Thank you. Any questions?
Excuse me?
Yes?
One more question. Does a connection throttling feature work for such technologies as WebRTC or WebSockets?
Yes, it does.
Even for peer connection WebRTC?
I'm pretty sure it does. I will have to check on UDP peer connections, but
cool.
Yes,
Thank
I'm going to look into that, but I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Do these work with the WebView, all these features?
With WebView?
Yeah, with the Chrome WebView.
The remote debugging?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay, great, thanks.
Maybe not. Hi, is this working?
Yes.
Hi, so just a quick question. I saw that you had a list of drop-down devices for mobile, like that you can. How do you get a device in there? So if you have that, will it work for other form factors, like if there's Chrome on
Very good question. We're trying to customize this. We're trying to make it customizable. And we're thinking about a couple of interesting ideas here. Like, for instance, you could potentially plug in your phone, right, and remote debug it. And it would then ask you to add the profile to your emulation. So we get that that's a common use case, that not all of these devices are the ones you want to test on. And we're working on that.
For the emulation for the device, if you can have the Chrome browser and the internet browser that it comes with, which one is it that gets emulated?
Sorry. So you get the Chrome?
So on the Samsung
Yes.
Samsung Notes and Tabs, there's an internet
okay.
browser that it comes with, and then you can install Chrome. So which one is the one that gets emulated?
You mean that gets emulated, or when you remote inspect it?
When it gets emulated in the tool.
So probably Chrome, but there will be quirks in there that we can't properly emulate. So even the Samsung browser is nowadays based on Chromium, and for instance, we don't emulate the whole UI, right? So there's limited things that we can do there. So my guess is that even if we would have two different profiles, they would look roughly the same, because they have the same resolution. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
You mentioned that the network emulator worked on individual tabs.
Yep.
Is it the same for the emulator as well?
Yes, for the emulator as well.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
Does the device emulator primarily emulate the resolution, or does it actually emulate the JavaScript engine and the HTML renderer for the device?
Primarily the sensors and the resolution. So with JavaScript, so yes, that would be a cool feature, right? I mean, we have considered, thinking about removing certain features that don't work on the device, but we don't have that in there right now. So, yes.
Does the device emulator bring in Android fonts? Or does it emulate typography as well? Or is it
Very good question. No, right now it doesn't, but that would be very interesting, actually. Yeah, that's a good point.
Thanks.
Yes.
The device emulator and network throttling are fantastic features. Is there any way to use them with automated testing tools like Selenium?
Well, for that, I guess you would need an API. And there's no API yet. But we're very early in the life cycle of that feature. So, it's very possible, especially if you open a bug ticket and tell me that you want it. So please do. And I can't promise, but I think the use case is clear, and yes.
Hi, is there any plan of adding Android browsers as well, where you can remote debug Android browsers along with Chromium?
Well, we can only do that if the Android browsers are actually based on Chromium. If they are, we probably should be able to, but it's hard to say. I mean, with Chrome, we obviously control the environment on both ends. Mm-hmm. And with the Android stock browser, we often don't. But we'll try our best to bring it everywhere we can.
OK, thanks.
Hey, is the remote debugging only possible in KitKat and Android, or it's also possible in iOS?
It's right now only possible on Android. I'm not sure if we can change that for iOS. It's just a technical limitation right now, because we have to use we can't put Chromium onto iOS. Mm-hmm. We have to use their web view. Yeah. So for instance, if they would implement the same remote debugging protocol, we could probably connect them, but we don't have that today, unfortunately.
Thanks.
Hi. Can the bandwidth menu with offline and then online can be used to test app where you have, save something locally and then sync back when you're online? Change of state.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's what it's for. Okay. So you can completely emulate app cache scenarios and the upcoming service worker scenarios.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, first off, thank you for all these features. They look really useful.
You're welcome.
Thanks. And my question is, this new black design of the emulation panel looks much different than rest of the DevTools. Is it beginning of something bigger? Like, are you introducing black theme to the whole DevTools or something like that?
Very good question. So the reason why we designed that feature different than the rest of the DevTools was because it's inline in the page, so it's wrapped around the page, right? And we wanted it to not be in focus once you concentrate on the page. We want it to be sort of in the background, which is why we choose for that color theme and look. Now, I think we like that new look, and maybe it'll come to more of the DevTools. But you have to tell us what you like best. Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Chris.
Casting from the device to the desktop always has a problem with lag because it's slower. Is there a way to read the real frames per second of the device and get that sent through to the DevTools?
I think we're trying to do that as much as possible. But you're right. I mean, there is a lag problem, depending, of course, on the resolution and other characteristics on the phone. If we can speed it up, we'll do it. I mean, we'll try as much as possible. I can't actually say more than that.
OK, I found a bug.
OK, cool. Yes, all right, and that's it. Thank you.